Hey everyone, I just wanted to talk about my thoughts on the new Hardcore Wipe and Escape from Tarkov. If you're here from my Stardew Valley video, this is going to be a very different change of pace. This is just going to be kind of a quick and dirty video, minimal editing. And if it's not to your taste, no worries, I got more challenge run content coming soon for Oblivion Remastered. So, as of recording this, the Hardcore Wipe and Escape from Tarkov has been out for about a week. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I feel that I might be able to offer a slightly different perspective than you may have heard from some of the other larger streamers and content creators for this game. And on a more personal note, I wanted to share my thoughts because I consider myself a casual Tarkov player. And yeah, a little over 1,000 hours, and ever since PvE came out, I've been pretty much a PvE exclusive player. I was excited for a change and some challenge in PvE when this hardcore rule set was announced, and sad to find out that it was only for PvP. And, you know, for a long time, I was convinced I would never return to PvP, but I wanted to try this hardcore wipe, and so this wipe might very well be the last time I ever play PvP Tarkov. So that's why I wanted to share my thoughts, kind of almost a farewell to the PvP side of Tarkov. So let's go through what this wipe entails. So in the days leading up to this wipe, they released a few images teasing what would happen. As you can see above me, flea market disabled. Also, I'm just going to be like blazing through this. So if you're not familiar with Tarkov, none of this is probably going to make sense to you. But sorry about it. So flea market disabled. Personally, I never really used the flea market that much, other than to buy some hideout items, crafting items. I never really bought gear off of the flea market unless it was for missions, things like setup where you need the Ushanka and the scav vest. So I would never buy guns and armor off the flea market unless I needed them specifically for things. I also never really sold things on the flea market unless it was like a really valuable item that sold for a lot more in the flea market than it does to the traders. Overall, I would say disabled flea market doesn't affect me personally that much, but I think it is a good change overall, because if you want something specific, you kind of have to go find it yourself, and that means more time in the raid, which I think is good, more time playing the game and less time out in the menus and, you know, just waiting for things to show up on the market or waiting for things to sell so you can buy things on the market to play the game a little bit. I just think more time in raid is good, especially for a PvP style game. Secondly, this is going to be a big one. Increased item requirements for hideout zones. As someone who plays on a standard account, this is very, very frustrating. The standard stash size for a standard account is, in my opinion, too small to accommodate all the things that you need. The standard stash size comes in at 10 by 28, 280 cells. Now mine is currently 10 by 30, and I don't remember if that was a change they made or if that was from an event. If you bought a standard account now, I don't know that yours would be 10 by 30. It might be 10 by 28, which is really small. And the items required to upgrade your hideout zones have basically just been doubled all across the board. So let's take a look at water collector here. So the water collector takes, in previous wipes, it took 3 duct tape, 5 nuts, 5 bolts, and 4 corrugated hoses. Now it takes twice as much: 6 duct tape, 10 nuts, 10 bolts, 8 corrugated hoses. Now, all of these items take up 42 squares of space. I did the math here. Assuming that, you know, you buy a new account today and you have a 10 by 30 stash, like I do currently, that's 300 spaces. the items you need for water collector 1, 42 spaces, that's 14% of your stash space, assuming you don't put anything into a junk box or, tactical rigs that can carry more than the space they occupy. 14% of your stash space is taken up by items you need to upgrade one zone, one level. That's a little ridiculous. And you can't add things one by one. You have to get all of them before you can upgrade this. That is just a little absurd, and it takes up a lot of space in your stash. Now, you can buy this junk box here from Therapist, but item prices have been increased this wipe. This now, it previously costed 1.1 million rubles, now it costs 1.8. That's, an extra 700,000 rubles. That's not a small amount of money starting out. And with item prices being reduced, the money you get for selling items has been reduced this hardcore wipe as well. That just takes a long time to get all that money. Now, I have Arena, and I can send 500,000 rubles from Arena to this account every 24 hours. But if you buy a standard account today, you don't have access to Arena. That is a separate purchase. If you want to increase the size of your stash, you can do that too on the website by paying real world money to increase your stash size. But I haven't, and I won't. Otherwise, you have to upgrade your stash in game. And that takes 2.5 million rubles and a bunch of items that take up 25 squares of space. That's a lot of money and a lot of items for an extra 100. 10 by 30 increases to 10 by 40, an extra 100 squares of space. And the next two upgrades are even more expensive. I've always felt that the standard stash size is too small and takes up too much to upgrade. And this hardcore wipe has only made it worse. So I think the increased item requirements is just such a huge pain in the ass for this hardcore wipe. I understand that a large portion of the consistent player base for this game have the Edge of Darkness edition, which starts you with a fully upgraded stash, by the way, but you can't get EOD anymore. You can pay $250 for the Unheard edition of the game, but I think that's outrageous. 1.0 is releasing sometime this year, allegedly, and the game will be coming to Steam. And if a bunch of new people decide to buy this game when it comes to Steam, they're probably going to buy the standard version. So they're going to feel this pain. Now, we don't know if the increased item requirements is just for this wipe, or if this is a permanent change that's going to be in effect when 1.0 rolls around later this year. But I think something should be done. Either increase the standard account stash size slightly, or make the upgrades to the stash easier to obtain, or you could even break them up into more levels and make each one a smaller increase in size but much easier to obtain. Or I think BSG could easily make a bunch of new containers, and just containers of different sizes. Like, imagine an ammo case that's like half the size, a small ammo box, half the size, and it's just, on the traders right away, or is just a common loot item. You can find a, probably slightly uncommon item. I think that would go a long, long way to just make the standard account experience more enjoyable, because my shit is already full, and this thing is full with stuff that I know I'm gonna need later. If you are new to Tarkov and you don't know all of the things that you need later on, maybe this isn't as much of an issue for you. But if you are familiar with Tarkov, this is, I've got over 1,000 hours in this game. I've been through a few wipes. I know things that I'm gonna need later, like these 2 cowboy hats. I know I'm gonna need at least one sledgehammer, probably two, to upgrade the water collector even further and break down the wall to get the gym. I know I'm going to need tank batteries later, and they just take up so much space. So, again, I feel like something needs to be done to increase the standard stash size or make dealing with it more manageable. Restricted location accessibility. This is already not an issue anymore. They've changed it so now all the maps are open. Secure container restrictions. You can't put any ammo, any meds other than stims in your secure container, and you can't put cash in it anymore. This, honestly, doesn't affect me that much. I never really brought stuff into raid via the secure container. Now, again, I'm a standard account, so my secure container only holds 4 cells. If you have EOD, yours holds 9. That's a big increase. Now, if you watch all of the EOD accounts, like the larger streamers and content creators, in previous wipes, they would pretty much always have like 2 stacks of extra ammo in their secure container, a surgery kit of some kind, painkillers, splints, and like a docs case or yes, a sick pouch to hold money and keys and documents and stuff like that. I never really played that way. I have always used my secure container to put things into it in raid, like hideout items and high value loot items, so that, you know, if I die in raid, I still get some value out of it. That's how I've always used my secure container, especially since mine doesn't hold anything. It's 4 cells. I can't put in a surgery kit and 2 stacks of ammo and a bunch of extra meds. I just can't do that. I don't have the space for it. So I never really used it that way. So the restrictions on the secure container doesn't bother me much. I know some people have been complaining about it, but I've seen a lot of people say they want the secure container to be locked in raid, meaning that when you go into raid, you can't put anything into it. And I think that's a terrible idea. I genuinely, if I couldn't put some nuts and bolts up my ass to save if I die, I just wouldn't play the game. I don't win a lot of fights. I mean, currently my survival rate is, you know, over 50%, which is really high. But that's because I've been playing very stealthily and sneaking around and avoiding fights. What have I've only killed, 10 PMC kills total. That's not a lot considering 27 raids. I usually avoid fights because, you know, I'm not the best at these PvP shooters, so I tend to avoid fights. Again, if I couldn't put anything into my secure container in raid and, you know, save something when I die, I wouldn't play this game anymore. I think that's a terrible idea. I understand the thought process of dying means you lose everything you have. I get that. I understand that. But I think making the secure container locked in raid so you can't put anything into it, but you can bring stuff in with it, it just doesn't make sense. That just makes having the disparity between the standard alpha container and the gamma container much worse, because they can carry a lot more in their secure container than I can. So if they can bring a lot more, that's, you know, just more of an advantage they have. And I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, the giant secure container is pay to win. It doesn't make that much of a difference, but it's the principle of the matter, you know? So, third slide. 100% boss spawn chance. They've already reduced that a bit. I never really fight bosses. I tend to avoid them when I'm playing, and I usually play solo. So and again, I'm not a Giga Chad. I don't win a lot of fights. So I tend to avoid the bosses when I can. Now, I know that 100% Tagilla spawn rate on factory has been a pain for a lot of people, because that just means a bunch of the really good players get access to a very strong helmet and armor and weapons, you know, every factory run. And I do think that was probably a mistake. I think if they wanted to have a 100% boss spawn chance rate, they probably should have toned down what gear they had this early on in Wipe. And I think that would have been fine if they did that. But now the boss spawn chance has been reduced to like 70% at the time of recording this, so I think that's fine. So overall, my thoughts are, I do think this wipe is fun. I'm having a good time, but again, I am going into it with the thought process of, this is probably going to be my last PvP wipe for Tarkov. So I'm kind of determined to enjoy it and not let things get me down too much. Maybe that positive mentality is, affecting my experience and thoughts with this game. Who'd have thought it works that way? Overall, I'm enjoying it. I'm having a good time. I'm still just running into the pain of my stash is too small, but I've always had that issue. If you've never played Tarkov, I would not recommend playing it right now, because every wipe in Tarkov has felt like they're trying to tweak the experience for people who already know everything about the game and not considering new players. So just a new player's experience in this game is really rough. And like, unless you're really good at shooters going into this at 1.0, I don't know what that's going to be like. And I don't know what their goals are for this hardcore wipe. If this is, them just playing around and having a weird one last hurrah, or if this is them doing a bunch of testing to see what they kind of want the feel for the start of 1.0 to be. I think it's more the latter. I think that it's very possible that when 1.0 rolls around, there won't be a flea, at least for the start of it. Maybe they'll add it later, or maybe not at all. Or at least in previous wipes, when the flea was enabled, you had to get to level 15 before you could access the flea market. I don't know, that always felt just arbitrary to me. But I think if they put it behind a specific mission that requires you to set up access to the network, that makes a lot more sense to me for, a more story-focused game. And again, with the item requirements and the hideout, maybe they're going to keep the changes for 1.0 and make upgrading the hideout much more difficult and, presumably more impactful. Again, we don't know what BSG's goals are with this hardcore wipe, if it's testing or just giving players something to do to keep them occupied while they work out all the kinks for 1.0, or at least the ones that they can work out. But overall, I enjoy it, but I can't recommend it. I don't know, it's just difficult. But I'm someone who really loves this game, even though, again, I'm not a PvP person. I'm a casual PvE player. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my thoughts. I'll catch you later. Again, we've got challenge runs for Oblivion coming out that I'm working on. And also I have been streaming my experience with this wipe on Twitch. Still at Versame. Every Monday, Wednesday, Friday from around 12:30 or 1 to about 4. So if you want to see me struggle to play this terrible game that I love, see you there. Thanks for watching.